Hi, I'm Suffering Ramming from Around Nerds. Welcome to my review of Doctor Who Series 13/Flux series, Episode 2, War of the Sontarans. There may be some last spoilers ahead, so you want spoiled, turn off now. So we ended last week's cliffhanger with the TARDIS being threatened by the Flux about to be took out. Cloy spell sanding, all looked hopeless, and what are they going to do? And the way they solved it and resolved that cliffhanger in a genius way was they just wake up in a field. Felt a little bit cheap that they's like, oh, we've turned ourselves into a corner, how are we going to get out? Let's just wake them up. Hopefully that'll be explained later on, to sort of explain how they got out of that situation. I suspect it's the TARDIS repositioning itself. TARDIS has been known to do that. It can reposition itself if it's threatened. Has happened in the past. I suspect that's what's going to be the reason for this, or if not, that's my guess as to what's happened, how they got there. But anyway, they find themselves in a field, in a battlefield, in the Crimean War. Not the greatest place to be. I don't know much about the Crimean War, so I'm not sort of comment on it. Most of what I know is actually from what I saw here. The only thing I really know about the Crimean War was Florence Nightingale, who is name dropped in this episode. But we actually focus on a person called Mary Seacole, who I had not heard of before this episode. I have now Googled her, read up on Wikipedia and got a rough idea of her background and learnt a little bit about her. Seemed like a very cool, respectful person. And she's basically built a place called the British Hotel, which you see in the episode. And she's helping wounded soldiers. But with a slight twist. So instead of fighting the Russians like we're meant to be, we are instead fighting the Sontarans. And it's not a case of the Russians are there anyway and the Sontarans have just dropped down and attacked. Sontarans have actually somewhat changed history, and that's why they're now there fighting. The characters, as far as they're concerned, have always been fighting the Sontarans. It's sort of like time has been slightly rewritten. Shortly after fighting the Sontarans, Yaz and Dan both disappear. So, what happens then? Well, Dan finds himself back on modern day Earth, also under Sontaran control. Literally just a short time after we initially encountered Dan, shortly after he left initially with the Doctor. A couple of days it's stated in the programme. We find him back, and as I said, Earth is now under Sontaran control. They're building massive ships. He's out there having to sort of find out what's going on and get some explanation. On his own back, he decides to go and try and infiltrate the dockyards in Liverpool and recapture or infiltrate the spaceships. Yaz also finds herself in a strange place. She finds herself in this weird place. And this is the tie-in to the Flux story arc. So the Sontaran side of it is very... Although it feels almost Monster of the Week with a little bit tied into the overall plot line, the Sontaran side could have happened in any Monster of the Week episode. The sort of sad thing is the fact that they slipped in when the Lupine were guarding the planet. Sontarans slipped their way in. As the explanation is how they got there and how they got through. And that's about as far as the technology, the link to the Flux episode is. However, Yaz's bit is all about the Flux. That is the sort of running theme. It's almost a secondary plot, actually, to the main plot of the Sontarans. This place she finds the guy from the space station here as well. They're being asked by these weird diamondy things to repair things. They don't quite know how. And eventually they encounter our evil aliens from last episode. The Swarm turns up and his colleague turns up. And they have to encounter him. Oh, the issue is one to the Victorian guy very briefly. What he's probably going to play, I don't know. He's also going to turn up at some point, be important for something, but I'm guessing he'll turn up as a later storyline element later on. So, back on the Sontarans, the plot line is I actually thought was quite good. It's about dealing with the Sontarans' invasion of time and how to stop it. I actually enjoyed it. I thought the plot was good. Some bits I found a little bit weird. The British Army General decides to fight the Sontarans, which he's told is suicide. But I'm not sure how accurate this tactics was. They just sort of, and if you've watched the preview, you would have seen the preview trailer for this, you would see this. They, rather than discipline formations, firing and advancing, they just charge at each other, and then when they get about 3 inches apart, start shooting at each other. Feels very very random. It feels oh, let's just throw them at each other. It doesn't feel like any sort of strategy there at all. Having said that, I don't know a lot about British strategy at the time. I'm not a military historian. That may be hyper-realistic. I somehow doubt it. If any of you are military historian or have an interest in the past, please throw in the comments how inaccurate that was, because to me it felt completely bizarre. One thing I will say, actually, I thought was the effects were really good in the ship, and the spaceship effects and the time were really nicely done. Not a lot of effect shots, but they were used very well, and that's the better way to do it. Have a few effect shots done really well, rather than lots of effect shots done okay-ish. And I prefer when they do that way than the other way. So, a pretty neat, good episode. I like some of the tarbacks. They call back to Commander Lynx, who was a Sontaran who landed on the planet in the 13th century. In the it's John Pertwee still called the Time Warrior. Nice callback to him there. Like the callback. I like the sort of Sontarans. The humour level just right. We also get to see some of the characters from previous episodes return. Here's a complete side thing. Do we think the guy who Dan finds trick-or-treating, was that there purely as a character establishment, or is that guy going to somehow turn back up? I expect he's going to turn back up. Maybe not as a main thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some callback to him later on. Like, they need help with somebody and it happens to be him type thing going on. Because that's such a weird little scene otherwise. It might be just such Dan's character, but it went on for too long. So I'm going to wonder if he turns up. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed this episode. The cliffhanger at the end of this episode was really good, and it's going to be a case of how do they get out of this one. So I'm looking forward to next week when we find out how they do it. So yeah, really good series so far, and a really good episode. So I really appreciate you watching this. If you've enjoyed this, I hope you would consider perhaps subscribing to our YouTube channel. We do podcasts every fortnight. Our most recent podcast was done last night. You can watch that on our content. You can go back and watch that one. Our next one will be on the 20th of November at 9:30. We also stream games. You can watch me streaming games this Tuesday. I'll be doing roughly 8:30, 9 o'clock time, UK time, on twitch.tv/SuffolkRam. And thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next week on our next review. So until then, see you later.